In this video, we're going to go over building a splitter for the Crown Vic Grand Marquis platform. Now, to make things a whole lot easier, we're going to be using the quick release system from Professional Awesome and their splitter rod system as well. Now, this full kit of parts comes with brackets, the quick releases. They're pretty sweet because they're just like that for putting on and off the splitter, other than the support rods in the front. We got bolts for tying them down, and then these ends are for titanium skid pucks that go through our wood splitter up into these, and then these will be using these fiberglass rods to support the weight where it can take weight from the top, but if it hits something on the bottom, it will deflect because these things can bend, but when they're in tension, they stay the same. Now, after looking over the frame on the chassis, I'm just going with a simple bracket like this. It's just neck down like this to fit between two raised areas on the frame itself. So it'll just sit in between there. I'll drill holes in here and weld it on. Now, over here I've already got one bracket drilled, and this is how they bolt on. So it'll be attached to the frame on this side, and then they can just be bolted on. There's plenty of adjustment, so I can move it up and down based on all these holes that are drilled. Now, to make sure that everything was truly in line, I did one hole first, bolted this down, and then center punched the other side, making sure that it was square to my part, and then drilled and tapped the second hole to make sure that they line up nice. This is how I plan to mount the bracket. As you can see, it's in between these two raised area or crumple zone areas on the frame itself. Now, because we got a supercharger on this one, an intercooler, I got to be spaced out enough to clear, which is why this is using an angle bracket to get that spacing out. The piping is a little different on the other side, but at this 2-inch angle, it'll still clear on both sides. On the other side, the pipe's to the outside versus the inside. If we didn't have this going on, it'd be a lot easier to try to go straight to the frame. However, that bracket's just a little too wide for this area to just bolt on and leave it. So if going that route, you'd still need to either space it out like I'm doing with a piece of angle bracket that's welded on, or you could maybe offset a little more to the rear and then just drill 2 holes into the frame and run just a machine spacer, something just to shim it out far enough to get over that raised area on the frame. There's plenty of options there. There's really no right or wrong way. It just has to be a solid, rigid mount that's going to take the weight generated by downforce when air is moving under the splitter. Alright, there's brackets welded in. I used a right-angled magnet just to hold it up there on the top and considered that good enough squared to the frame. I measured from this edge right here down to the bottom edge to match the height side to side, and then I used my magnetic level to stick on the bottom to make sure that it was level on this side to this flange up here down, and then instead of doing that on the other side, I made sure that this side matched to the other side so that I knew that they were going to line up. Here I'm just mocking up a template. So this is like a, like a thicker cardboard kind of thing, and then I'm just taking a plumb bob, because almost all the rules are off of the, most outer part of the body vertical. So I'm just using the plumb bob to find a spot and then drawing a rough line around it. I've got it pretty much pushed up to where the mounts are right now, which is as high as I can go in the chassis without cutting the mounts right now, and it should be pretty close. It might be too low, but then we can trim the mounts down if we have to. I'm not worried about angle or anything like that yet because this is just a floppy piece of cardboard, so need to wait until we get the plywood itself cut and ideally mounted to the supports, that way it's rigid, and then I can take a right angle straight edge and then just bump it up against and then mark out at, in this particular case, 6 inches is how far we want the splitter to stick out. And then I can just kind of taper it off as I see fit on the edges, because we really don't want it sticking out past the tire, because this is going to be set up for autocross as the priority use, so we don't want to have our splitter out farther where we have to drive further around cones. And we're going to tip the corners back just for additional ground clearance, because when the car is kind of pitched over in yaw, as well as accelerating or in this particular case braking, it's going to put that corner down extra low compared to the rest of it, which, you know, we'll still be able to use the corner of the body and just kind of pull that back some to make it work. But we'll basically just go from the full 6 inches and then kind of taper off as we go, so we're losing a little bit of that extra low spot when the car is in that kind of a pitch. Now you can go straight to plywood and just mount that up and then go with that. However, with the size that we're going to be working with, I think I can get 2 splitters out of the 4x8 piece of plywood. We'll see. It's going to kind of depend, but if I can get 2 of them out of it, I'm going to try to maximize the usage of the plywood itself, versus I would have to just kind of like line it up, and I need more space than I currently have around the front of the car anyway to try to mock it up real well. But basically, once I've got it roughed in and we've got a piece cut, then I can mount it up to those splitter mounts, the quick releases, in which case it'll let it tilt and move all around, because we don't have any mounts in the front yet for splitter rod supports, and I can kind of finalize the size there. And if I think I need to, based on how this template's going to look, to try to make sure that we're not cutting too much and being able to make that second splitter, unless it just looks totally like it's not going to, in which case we'll just cut the piece and start working with it. But if it's kind of close, then, you know, as long as I've got it set up where I know where the mount holes are at, so that we can bolt it up afterwards, I can set the car down and move it. In that way, we can just keep repeating with the quick releases as they're intended while we're still setting up, or still mocking up and finishing the splitter. Well, it should be pretty obvious already. There's no way we're getting 2 splitters out of this, simply because I want to add 6 inches here. So that's going to kind of position right there. This is where I want to cut it off at the back. By the way, this piece is my template from the Cutlass originally. So it was just what I had to be able to trace this line in the front. So actually I should be able to measure out and start making a few marks as we go along here. And I know I want to cut at that back edge. But yeah, we're wide enough, there's no way we're getting a second one. Sometimes, depending on the size, you may be able to flip it and get some there, but usually that's a, you know, a smaller car kind of a thing. And I was surprised how big it's actually ending up compared to, I didn't think we were going to be this deep. I was thinking maybe 2 feet tops, and it's a lot closer to 3. So why don't we just push this back? I know I want to leave a little bit. We were in a couple inches there, so might as well just move it over so I don't cut myself short anywhere. We're going to have a bunch of waste on this piece anyway. So I'll line up my cut edge on the back, just because that'll be a nice straight line anyway. And then we can just kind of give this a trace. Then I know I want to extend out. Just make sure I give myself plenty extra. And then, yeah, let's find where that front's going to be. As long as this stays put. So where I'm at 6 inches out from here, I'm already out past where my 4-inch cut's going to be, and that's fine. So we just want a rough idea of where I could stay out from it so that we can get it fit up and then do our final cut. Really, I could probably just go off because I already did this anyway. Like, I can trust everything up there, so I can make that cut basically my finished cut there. The only difference would be, you know, any little bit of back and forth that might need to be adjusted for. However, it also comes down to whether we're a 1/4 inch one way or the other. The amount of performance we're going to be gaining or losing from that isn't that big a deal. If anything, I'd rather end up slightly short anyway, just so that, you know, it's never a question about whether the car is rules legal, sort of a thing. We don't need to be, you know, DQ'd from something over a silly 1/8 or 1/4 inch of splitter when the realistic performance from that, especially in an autocross, is not going to be anything worth worrying about, and the benefits we're going to get on a road course are still going to be, you know, 90% of it there or more. I mean, it wasn't meant to make that curve, but that curve looks pretty damn good, so I might run with that just as a leading edge. It looks pretty consistent. Alright, now that side's just chamfering the top off a little bit. It's not putting a full round, it's just kind of like to deburr the edge and make it so that it doesn't chip so easy. And then I gotta change the depth so I can put as big a radius on the bottom as I can. I'm not finishing this edge here yet because we want to put it on the car and then figure out what looks good and, you know, what profile we want right there. So back over here at the car, I've got it side to side centered based off of the outside edge profile of the bumper, and I've got it front to back even based off of the suspension arm on both sides so I could get a similar measurement to make sure it was square across the car. And just taking a quick little visual look to the bumper again, it doesn't quite look even side to side off of that stuff, but I'm less concerned about the bumper itself, and I think that the control arm is going to be a much better thing to locate off. However, I would like to take a couple more measurements just to be absolutely sure on that. But I feel confident enough about it right now that I can go and mark the 2 hole locations that I can reach on my splitter mounts, just with a Sharpie from the top, just as a reference, so that we can drill holes and get it bolted up to those quick releases. There's 4 holes in each one. I can only reach 2, but once you got 2, you can line up the rest of them. And then our quick release mounts should be in a place where we can put this on and off, and it will repeat every time, nice and easy. Front to back, the tire could be another reference you go off of. However, with the way that this car droops out and the alignment, they're not, where the steering wheel is at, they're not even side to side, so it's a terrible thing to go off of. That's why I'm looking at the control arm as a better place to go off. However, I can crawl in there a little farther and then maybe measure off of the cross member, because that'll be a fixed reference point too. Alright, now I did take my right angle and trace out the 6 inches again. As you can see over on this side, it was right where it needed to be, and then our line kind of pulls in a little bit. This side ended up a little bit proud. We just didn't get the splitter cut super square, but this is why I didn't mind leaving a little bit of extra on there. I was maybe a little hopeful that this edge was going to be right where it needed to be right off the bat, but it's okay, because once we got it lined up, we can make it work. The other thing is I could have twisted this to make that edge true, and the back could have been whatever, because it's under the car. We really don't care. It depends on how much effort you want to put into a wood splitter that is going to get smashed at some point. So you got to kind of balance how nice you want it to be versus it just being functional. And for the edge here, you can see I left way tons extra. So again, straight edge, and then kind of guessing where that tire is going to be when it pulls up. I know it's just a little bit proud up here, so I kind of factor that in down here. Just drew a straight line that was square to this back edge that got us out to here, and then it just blended in with our 6 inch. We're still 6 inch right here, so then I just blended that off to make it work. Alright, so now it's latched with the quick release system, and we've got adjustment of the angle of the splitter still, which will be set with our splitter rods in the front. I'm going to take a measurement of what angle the car chassis is currently at. There'll be a little bit of variation with ride height front to back, so we'll have to deal with that. But in the meantime, just for setting this up there, I need to find some solid points to mount to with the splitter rods, and then where I'm going to be able to run them down to on the splitter itself in order to support it. I've got 2 options right now. The obvious one is drill through the bumper cover, build a bracket behind it, and it gets mounted something like this, which is definitely going to give it the most support out here. Another possible option is a hidden setup like this, where we need to move in a little bit to make it work, so that we take some angle out of this. It'll still be fairly vertical to work out. Makes for really short rods, but it's a cleaner look. The hard part is the outside here, because you've got a little bit of a cover on the inside here that'll have to get removed, but then it's going to end up at a much bigger angle to try to get out to this corner to support it, or will be tucked in here where it's it's probably going to be there to there, there to there, which would be pretty consistent, which I think I'd be okay with, and just know that out here is going to be a little bit less structure in it at the moment. Right now the plan is not putting any tunnels or anything on it, although I might want to run an extra support board between the mounts on the inside. We do have some room there where, you know, maybe not quite a 2x4, but, you know, a 1x something to run across there as a stringer would help stiffen that up quite a bit. You know, really it kind of comes down to personal preference on it. As long as it's supported well, it will function correctly. We just don't want to be doing anything where it's going to be flapping around in the wind on track, and not where it's going to be, you know, at risk of getting damaged otherwise. I mean, after all, we should be able to stand on this when it's done. So right now it's just hanging off of that boost tube in the back that's holding it from tipping farther down. We've currently got 3.5 inches of ground clearance, which I think is okay. It's not too bad. I mean, it should be all right for driving around on the street. Just, you know, we're kind of far out from the wheelbase, but I don't know, I might have to be a little careful. But I wanted to mock this up and get the car back on the ground to check a third option, in which case I could make the mounts go right underneath on the tuck of this bumper. I'd have to make structure support out off the crash bar for it, but I think that's going to be the best option, because now I've got, you know, anywhere I want to put the splitter rod, it'll work. And the hidden option was going to limit me on how far out I'd be able to place it. It was also going to kind of eliminate the easiness of this being a quick release system by hiding this pin up in behind the bumper cover, where you wouldn't be able to just come by, rip the pin out, push this one out, and separate it to take the splitter off. So that could really turn into a pain in the butt going on and off a trailer, or if to be safe you wanted to pull it off for street driving, kind of a thing. So I don't like the hidden option. The through the bumper cover option, obviously no problems there with any of that as far as the quick release system. However, it's going to be all that plastic crash bar stuff is right behind here, so we're going to have like some pretty big standoffs from anything metal to come out and be able to support it, versus down here at the bottom, you know, we're still coming out a little ways, but at least it's somewhere where everything's accessible, and we can then use a gusset to go up. Otherwise, through the bumper is going to require just a big standoff and then cutting more of that plastic out of the way, versus down the bottom we'd only have to notch the plastic just a little bit and we can add a gusset. So I'm thinking this third option is going to be the way to go. It just kind of sucks here now, because now I got to pull this bumper cover back off, and then it's going to be a little bit of back and forth to try to get all that stuff set just right. But once it's there, it'll be good. Decided to go with that third option for sure. Nothing fancy on the brackets, just flat right to the bottom of the crash bar support, and then some gussets added on just so that when pressure is applied out the end, it's not bending the whole tab as much as it would if it was without the gusset. So nothing fancy, just getting the job done. Here's what I've ended up with. I think it's a pretty clean install. I'm happy with that. You know, we didn't cut through the front of the bumper at all, and then those brackets are plenty reinforced. I thought about coming straight out with all four of them, but I kind of wanted the corners to have a little bit more support, so that's why they're angled out. Just because it's such a, if they were straight, it's such a big area out there to the side. really, with how far in those quick releases are, we should be adding some kind of structure out here from that to help support out here, or it'll be something like a tire spat tied in that's actually structural loading at the back to really support this outer edge in a way that I feel is comfortable. But overall, this is a solid start. I'm always a bit nervous the first time because these are compression locking on those fiberglass rods, so it always makes me a little bit nervous about whether I tighten those enough, but here we go. Functional. Now I'm 215-ish pounds, so to carry that kind of load, hopefully if the splitter is functioning in a way that we're hoping, we're adding at least that, if not double that in downforce. But every 100 pounds or so is pretty significant as far as how it changes the handling of the car. So that's what's important, is it needs to be able to carry that load. And not all of that is from the top, a lot of that is from the bottom, because what it's doing is it's making the air, as it passes under the splitter, move faster, and therefore it creates a lower pressure and sucks the car down. Now once we get around to building the air dam, that'll have to come up off of the splitter here and basically rest against the front of the bumper or wherever we design it to make it function, because we do want airflow down here through these vents, nothing on the side, so we might notch it and come up. But once that is built, we are building positive pressure on the top as well. But the biggest effect of getting downforce is coming from the bottom of the splitter. Hi, what? Yeah, okay, I'm trying to do stuff here. You are interrupting. You don't care, do you? No, come on. Frank, I'm trying to do stuff. Stay. Oh. Where's your ball? Go throw your ball. Huh? Anyway, so now that we've got the splitter mounted, we need to work on an air dam for figuring this out. Oh, he's back. Nope. I like using this plastic. I get it from Speedway Motors. It's just called race car body plastic. I know a lot of people use like garden edging or something else, but I like this stuff. It comes in a 2-foot wide by 25-foot roll. So you kind of just cut it down to whatever size, you just score it with the razor blade, and then you can kind of bend it and snap it off. Or just cut it all the way through the razor blade. But I wasn't sure how this was going to work out, being we got tapered surfaces. Like on my Cutlass, it's, you know, nice square-ish edges where it works out. And I didn't know about this curve, because I thought maybe this stuff would want to lay flat like that. But we're just kind of throwing it up here and pushing it into place. This doesn't look too bad. Like, it kind of just forms around. So as long as we get the base screwed in a location where it puts just a little bit of tension on the body, I think this will work out really well. So I'm going to work on that right now and just get it marked out so that I can put either some angle iron or little aluminum brackets that are an angle piece, or even just another piece of wood cut to the shape I want, so that we have a way to attach the air dam into whatever we're using that's raised up in order to attach this. You know, you don't have to do it solid all the way around, although being as this is a pretty big curve, I'm leaning towards using some wood and just making that curve so that we can have a very good fit on this car in particular. Otherwise, like with the aluminum brackets, they're usually like 1.5 inches wide something like that, so you can just kind of space them out and you'll get the shape you need that way too, or you can. I've got a really rough shape traced out on there now just from holding the material up. So I'll pull the splitter off now and actually take some measurements to try and make it as uniform as possible, because I don't know, I want the sides to look the same and I want it to be even across the front. I don't want a big waviness or fat on one side, narrow on the other, that kind of a thing. So we'll just demonstrate how easy it is to drop the splitter. So just pulling the pins in the front. And the splitter's off. Now obviously once we get an air dam on here, it won't be that easy, and we'll have to build some kind of a mechanism, either pull cables or actuation rods, to be able to reach those quick releases. We can also maybe build something that works from under the hood as well, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Alright, we're not leaving cat out of this one. Use your favorite beverage box. I just kind of kept trimming until it lined up with my profile line that I was looking for, that I rough drew. And then I was able to take this, mirror it to the other side. See that where I tried to freehand the corners wasn't the same side to side, but that's irrelevant now, because now we've got a template for making this whole edge. And I'm gonna go to this thicker plywood scrap piece that I had laying around, so that I can transfer this edge over and just lay it on here where I can cut it in two ways, you know, so I can have each side. It doesn't need to be this thick, but I probably want to leave it, you know, probably a minimum of an inch, but I'll probably go 2 inches just to have a little extra strength added in, where I can trace it out and be able to then screw it down so that we can screw on our air dam from the front side. Now up on the front section where it's largely straight, I might do the same thing, or maybe we'll just do a couple of blocks spaced out. It, you know, can work either way. Really, with how low of a curve there is to the front of the car, we could actually like pull it back to a straight line and just let the plastic naturally curve to the bumper. I don't know, I haven't got that far. We'll decide what it looks like when we get there. Now that we've got our pieces cut, I did these just for our front support. I'm not worried about the gaps. If you really want to spend the time to make it a solid piece, go right ahead. Like I said before, usually you could just use a few angle brackets, you know, all the way around to hold the air dam. I'm doing the wood because it's what I have on hand, and I'm worried about this bigger curve. I really want to maintain shape just to try to match up with that bumper as nice as possible. I mean, I might get done, spend all this time on it and it might not work out the way I hope, but It should be pretty close. I've also cut up another piece of scrap just to reinforce across the back like I talked about earlier. I'm just using basically drywall screws, wood screws here to run everything in. The ones I got are a little too long, so even if when I run them in they're going to stick out the bottom, I'll just end up grinding them down flush. I don't know, which direction you go is kind of a toss-up. I need to put at least a couple in from the top down in order to make sure that everything's lined up with my lines, and then I could flip it over and then run a bunch in from the bottom instead. However, I think I'm just going to run them in from the top and grind them off on the bottom, just so that I can do it a lot easier. Then everything's set and you just flip it over and grind everything on one side. Plus, if one ever decides to back out, hopefully won't be falling immediately under the car and hitting a tire, and it can just kind of sit up here and rattle around for a little while because the air dam will hold it to the front. I mean, this will be kind of blocking, like it probably, and then the way the little bit of rake on the splitter, it might just sit there and hang out until the next time the splitter comes off. Chamfers just make everything look better. So I went and chased it just around the edges, just to give it a little more finished of a look and to make sure that there isn't a whole bunch of splintering going on. Was able to grind off all the screws on the bottom. The little bit of bump of the wood here isn't going to affect anything. It's too small of a change to really matter as far as airflow is concerned. Now, at this point in time, I'd be ready to start doing finishing work. So that really kind of depends on your personal preference. Simply because, well, I guess to even go back there, like during the assembly process, so this is just screwed down wood here on top. If we were worried about having as much strength as possible, you know, we certainly could have wood glued these pieces on and then screwed it down. You know, we could be adding more structure in here. The big thing would be more concerned about structure if we were adding splitter ramps or tunnels in. I mean, they could be as small as, you know, sitting right in this area where we're gonna, you know, end up coming up 1.5 inches or 2 inches, and this whole window gets cut out. Now, you know, we could build that in with wood and then shape it all by hand. You can buy some that just, you know, screw on and you're cutting that opening. Well, then you need to kind of reinforce that area because now you've lost all this support. So even though we got a mount right here, this side of it would be fine, but now we've got nothing holding out here, so you need something to hold this corner up on the car as well, or be building some kind of a bridge over the top to strengthen it all in, provided there's room to even do that on the car. Same thing could happen here in the center. You know, we could have a bigger ramp up in the center area. Well, same thing. Every time we start cutting more and more off of the main plane of the splitter, the weaker it's getting, so we have to reinforce it. In which case, yeah, if we were doing a big ramp in here, I'd almost want to perimeter it all the way across, and then somewhere, you know, back here about the middle, we want to make sure that we're up high enough to bridge over that ramp to make sure that we're still getting lots of strength across the splitter from our quick releases, so that it's not turning into a big wobbly mess. Because as far as the airflow is concerned, if everything starts being active and moving around constantly, it's not going to be able to do its job generating downforce. As far as finishing goes, you know, I typically just will stain and then clear coat, just because I like the wood look, and I'm not trying to hide the fact that it's a wood splitter, because quite honestly, anybody that's building a splitter for performance doesn't really care as long as it functions. You could just paint it black. Basically, what we're trying to do here is trying to do something to seal the wood from the elements, because sometimes you race in the rain, sometimes you're out driving around, it starts raining. Just, you know, the splitter just might sit somewhere and get wet, and you don't want it to be destroyed just because it got wet. Now I've done the staining and clear coating method and had my first splitter last a couple of years. I mean, it got banged up and stuff here and there, and it had a few patches just to hold the thing together where it, you know, it torn a couple of splitter mounts out. It needed some reinforcement off and on, but I was able to make it last. And it didn't get retired or destroyed completely until it was destroyed completely by getting ripped off of the car at speed. So, I mean, really, as long as you do something to take care of it, it should be fine. And I mean, and I raced in the rain quite a bit with that splitter, and it never had an issue other than a little bit of separation at the leading edge where it had been damaged just from skidding on the ground. That's why we got our titanium pucks to keep it up off the ground. But you know, I'd worn through those and just like hitting little dirt berms or dropping a wheel in the dirt and just clipping the pavement on the way back up. You beat up the leading edge a little bit and it separated, and that's where water got in, and it never got bad enough for me to really worry about it until the whole splitter got destroyed itself. So I've also seen guys that get to about this point, and then for purposes of sealing it and adding a little more strength, they decide to fiberglass the whole thing. So if you wanted to fiberglass over this, and I mean, it's definitely going to seal it, and it's going to make it stronger because now you're making like a laminated layer again on top of the laminated plywood. It would really be a big improvement. And also, like, the more ramps and stuff you start adding, that's probably a better and better option, the more complicated the splitter gets. But in this case, we're keeping it real simple. It's not going to be an issue. I'm not going to be finishing this out just because the customer was talking about wanting to do it, you know, black or some other stuff. Like, I think they're more interested in just doing the finishing work themselves. So I'm just going to leave it at this. The big thing is I want to make sure that I can get the air dam screwed on and built. I'm going to have to do it in two pieces because I don't have enough length left, but I have enough width, so it's going to be like one half, one half. You'll almost won't even see the overlap in the middle because it's right behind the license plate, so should be all right. Ideally, you'd want to do it out of one single piece, but it's not going to hurt anything doing it out of two. Alright, this is what I'm doing for the quick releases. I just had these rod ends laying around. They were I got in a scrap pile, honestly. But they're nice rod ends and they were brand new, so I just made use of them. I ended up not using the threaded portion up here just because I needed some kind of a rod extension to get from the mount out to the front of the bumper so that we could make it work. So now I've got a right side, left side. They're gonna go in like this, so the bends are to make them level to pass through the front bumper. And then since it's a rod end, we don't have to worry about the angle when it gets to the quick release. And then just a 90 degree or close to 90 bend, so we got something to pull on. I gotta say, I'm pretty happy with the air dam fit up. It did make it a little bit more difficult to get the splitter installed in the first place. I think half of my battle there was my releases weren't pushed back all the way. So they were like kind of holding it open, so even though I was getting it lined up, it wasn't latching. So that'll be something I have to keep in mind going forward. But, I mean, it's right there. We're still got full air opening for cooling coming in through the slots. There are some block off panels that I have not put in, or put back in rather. over on the very sides, just because that's where the releases came through. Now I should be able to take the splitter off, get under there, and then notch out a slot in there to hold it, and that'll keep these from rattling around too. I just didn't want to go through the effort of trying to build some kind of support mount, because there's really no reason these things just can't kind of ride here. But I knew I needed to put that plastic back in, and I didn't want to like totally not be able to put them back in, because I want that air blocked off so that we're forcing our cooling air in. It's not going to be shoving air in that's making lift out in this area on both sides of the car, kind of a thing. Our ride height is pretty close to the ground, but it should be okay. Like I said, we're up as high as we can really go with where the mounts are currently at without cutting the mount down, which again we can do later. I think this is a good place to start and see how it does. It might be completely fine and we don't have to worry about it at all. Might even be a little bit lower, but it's going to be entirely dependent on where it gets driven and how hard it gets driven. But because this is a quick release system, we should actually see how long it actually takes to pull this off. So if we go, I'm just going to pull my pins from the splitter rods. They got a cotter pin on each one and the pin that actually does the load bearing. Alright, all those are out. Line up, grab our releases, and splitters off. This system is super cool for this reason, because you'd never get it on and off a trailer with the splitter on, and if you're going to the racetrack and want to just street drive it, say to the nearest gas station kind of a thing, you can just pop the splitter off and you don't have to worry about smashing it up on the street.